Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Another Monday, another Saints loss to talk about. Chargers 26, Saints 8 in LA over the weekend. The Saints welcome back a host of their missing offensive pieces. You got Cesar Ruiz back. You got Lucas Patrick back. You got Chris Olave back. Got Taysom Hill back. You didn't get Derek Carr back, but you had a lot of functional pieces to that offense. And you had the football for a total of 13 drives, and you got 2 field goals. Just putrid stuff on the offensive side of the football. I get it. Derek Carr helps. Spencer Rattler's a rookie. He started 2 games. Probably be nice to have your decade of starting experience under center. And the Chargers have a good defense. Doesn't really count that you were on the road because nobody goes to Chargers games that cares about the Chargers. But you couldn't do anything on offense. And you tried to get that running game going a little bit with Alvin Kamara. It never really did. He got 67 yards. You tried to get Taysom Hill involved a little bit. The biggest contribution he had in the game was tackling the punter on a safety. Didn't really do much with him. You tried Jake Haener, a little more quick hitters. Nothing really happened there. It just didn't work. And it just feels like that thunderbolt of Saints offense that we saw through 2 weeks is just completely gone. And it would be foolish to just suggest that the last 2 weeks with no Derek Carr, that the Saints would just be humming with 7 starters out on offense. It would be foolish to expect that. I love football players who suggest, hey, it's just next man up. You got to do your job. That's fine, but it's not really realistic. You had a lot of guys that were available yesterday, and you were completely inept on the offensive side of the football. And that's disheartening. And I didn't think the defense was bad. On Friday, I told you, this is a game the defense needs to say, okay, we're going to have a backbone here, because if you don't, the whole thing is going to break down, because the Chargers will run it and run it and run it and run it. Nobody had run it more than the Chargers entering the week. And the Saints defense pretty well held up. I mean, it wasn't great, but you bowed up against the run. Outside of Herbert's one run for 38 yards, you pretty much choked that off. J.K. Dobbins goes 17 carries for 57 yards and the 1 touchdown, but he wasn't dominating the game by any stretch. And you tried. And I mean, you'd given up 16 points through 3 quarters. Problem was your team had produced 8, and you produced 2 of those. So eventually the dam breaks, and it did. And McConkey got loose, and he had his 2 touchdowns, and it was this snooze fest of an 18-point victory for Los Angeles. And I don't think the Saints have quit. I don't think that change is imminent, right now. But I feel like you've now gotten to a point of basically no return. You're going to try to infuse a little bit of life into this week because you go play the worst team in the NFL and your quarterback's probably going to be back. But realistically, at 2-6, how could you expect New Orleans to make any sort of a push late in the season? You realize to have any shot at this, you've got to go 9-7. Any shot. Sorry, 9-8. You've got to have any shot. You got to go 9-8. That means you've got to go 7-2 the rest of the way. It's just not realistic. Not the way this team is playing, not the way the offensive line blocked yesterday, basically at full strength. Yeah, Eric McCoy helps, but you were basically at full strength, and you weren't able to clear much of a path for the running game. And so you've got an aging defense, an offense that's not productive right now, a hole that's too big to climb out of, and basically all eyes kind of pointing towards what the future holds. I realize that the Saints have not been a franchise to fire folks mid-season, to make sweeping changes. They've been they've kept continuity there as much as anybody probably outside of what was New England for 2 decades and then Pittsburgh. But you realize that there's change coming. And the question is, if you're a Saints fan, do you want the Saints to try to dig out of this hole and get off to a good start against Carolina next week and see what Derek Carr and the crew can do and see if you get hot like you did late last season? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, if this is a 4-13 team, you might be able to draft a quarterback, which is something the franchise hadn't done in decades, in the first round? Like, that's where my head is when I'm analyzing this team. It's just hard for me to come in here on Monday and try to talk about whether or not the defense could have been called a little bit differently on that third down, or whether or not that holding call altered the game in a specific way, or whether or not that dropped. Like, it doesn't feel like you're a play or two here or there away from this being different. It just doesn't. Not when you've lost 6 games in a row. You haven't won since mid-September, and we're about to be in November. It doesn't feel like the small things are significant at this point when analyzing New Orleans Saints. It only feels like the big stuff is important. And the big stuff is, who's your head coach going to be and what's the direction at quarterback? Derek Carr is going to be on this team next year. But I look at this game, I watched this game, I look at this box score, I understand what's been going on for 2 months, and it just feels so freaking bleak. I don't have another way to say it. It just feels bleak. It doesn't feel like you're close to anything. I mean, Beck, am I wrong in talking about this? Like, I thought about being like, you know, they just got dealt a crappy break with all these injuries, and they weren't in position to respond to their quarterback being out. And maybe this is actually, instead of a 2-6 team, it's a 4-4 team with Derek Carr out there. And I thought about trying to go down that road, and I'm going, that's not how I feel. I feel like they're not even close.
No, it's not. They're not just Derek Carr away, because the defense is really not played well for the past 5 games. I mean, they've given up 26 or more in the last 5 games. So
it was just a slow bleed yesterday.
Yeah,
they didn't get gashed like they did in the other games. It was just a slow bleed, and it really started when you couldn't hold the lead against Atlanta, and then it got really bad. And this was just, I felt like the defense showed up.
Yeah, they did,
but there was what are you going to fight for here? The Saints weren't going to score any points.
No, that's what I was going to say, is that when your offense is on the field for such a short amount of time, and you have to keep going back out there after your offense goes 3 and out, or gets to maybe a first down or 2, and you have to keep going out there, you just lose your confidence, or your will, because it's like, okay, even if we get a stop, like, what's the offense can't do anything. What is this? What are we doing out here? And eventually you just get wilted down towards the end of the game, and that's what happened. So yeah, it's definitely not just Derek Carr, man. There's a lot of problems with this team.
Which and goes back to a bigger point. The last thing on this game, you saw Spencer Rattler get benched. It was unreasonable to expect him to do a lot against Denver, but you had a long week to get ready against a team that was coming off of a short week. The game plan was going to be tailored to you. The offensive line in front of you was guys you expected to have out there for the most part. And he takes 3 sacks. He completes 50% of his throws. He didn't turn it over, which they talked about a lot, but there just wasn't any rhythm, any functionality to it. And look, I talked about this as well when they drafted him, and then in the preseason games. Like, I think it's always worth a flyer on one of these guys late, because if you end up with Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy or Kirk Cousins or one of these guys that you take a little bit later in the draft and it does hit, it's just such a massive advantage for you from a salary cap perspective to have a productive quarterback on a rookie deal for no money. And so it was exciting to an extent to maybe see him get his chance. But I didn't really see anything in 2 games that would lead me to believe that Spencer Rattler has a really bright future as the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. Like, that just seems like a far-fetched idea. Again, it's 2 games, and there are plenty of guys that have gotten off to to rocky starts to their NFL career and gone nuts. Jaden wasn't great in his first game against Tampa, but I just don't see a lot.
Maybe not, but again, I still every time I talk about rookie or we talk about rookie quarterbacks, I just always go back to what situation they're in.
Yep.
And Spencer Rattler, this was probably his best opportunity in terms of the health of the team, but other than that, it's just not a great situation.
No, it's not, and it's none of this is great. It's just the whole thing is a bummer, and I just don't see a small talking point that's worth drilling down on.
Not really.
To me, feels like it's all 30,000 feet, and the whole thing is an issue. It's
when you're losing by multiple scores every game,
week,
every single week
in the NFL.
In the NFL, you're not looking at maybe if the offensive line plays better, or maybe if they don't turn it over, or maybe if the defense gets a stop. It's not. That's just not that's not what we're looking at.
No,
we're looking at a lot more.
Ross Jackson wrote in his column that went up late last night and has certainly been on LouisianaSports.net today. It's like you were hoping that with a defense full of guys that have been really good players throughout their career and a defensive coach that's had a great defense in New Orleans his entire time here, that you could plug a new offensive coordinator into a veteran quarterback and that you would fix the offense and you would be in the discussion at the top of the NFC. And instead, you look here as the calendar turns to November and you're in the conversation right now with the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars and these teams at the bottom of the NFL that have no hope. And that's kind of where the Saints are. And so you've got an opportunity to go play Carolina this week, which is good. You're going to get your quarterback back, we all think, this week, which is good. But at this point, the hole's just too big. You're too deep in it to claw your way out, I think. And that's the bummer of this entire situation. So we'll put a button on that. Saints lose to the Chargers 26-8. They fall to 2-6 on the season, 1-6 away from home, and they will now travel to Carolina coming up this week. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.